This video is brought to you by my website, aeroparts.com. In this video, I'm going to be replacing all 4 shocks and struts on a 2012 Ford Focus. I'm going to be doing it the hard way technically, but in my opinion, it's not really that much harder. Now, there is more of a danger element to it. Yes, it's not as easy as the quick struts, the preloaded ones, but it does give you more options on a specific type of shocks that you want to use. So there's benefits to doing it this way, and of course there are some savings as well, but this video is mainly for people who are going to do it with the spring compressors anyways without having a shop. So I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do. Now, as you can see, the bolts, I have the arrows here because I'm kind of talking in the middle of it and explaining some things to you. These are where the bolts are located on the front. You're going to remove this plastic trim and you'll see them located underneath here. They're 13mm for the top strut mounts. And if you're replacing the shocks, at the very least on this car and many cars, change the strut mounts as well. You have to replace the strut mounts because a lot of times they just fall apart when you take them out. You can't reuse them. We're going to remove the top parts and start getting it off. This is the type of wrench that I used to access those 13mm strut mount bolts. And I'm removing the ABS sensor wire. And I'm going to be removing the end link. Now I'm going to turn it, as you'll notice, it's going to spin with the nuts. I need an Allen wrench to hold the center, and I'll show you exactly how I have it, just like this. That is how you will remove it. Once you remove that nut, you can just kind of pry up on it to remove. I'll show you in just a second to remove that end link. You can simply just get a pry bar and pry down, or you can get a jack and lift up the entire knuckle assembly. In my hand is where the pry bar is, where that arrow is where you could place your jack underneath the assembly and just lift it up to relieve some of that tension on it. From there you can get that end link out. Here are the other bolts in plain view. There's a 15mm that secures the knuckle to the strut. There's an 8mm for the brake line that needs to come out. And of course 18mm bolts for the caliper. I didn't show it, but you have to remove those as well. There are 2 different ways to remove the strut. You can remove the strut and leave the knuckle in the car, or remove the strut and knuckle assembly together. I did both actually, so I'm going to show you both in this video. For the passenger side, I removed the entire assembly, and for the driver's side, I removed just the strut. If you choose to remove the entire assembly, you can lift it off of this ball joint. You loosen that Torx bolt and you lift it up and off. Just be careful working around that ball joint not to tear it. If you choose to remove the strut and leave the knuckle on the vehicle, you have to spread the knuckle to relieve some of that tension. And these knuckles are pretty strong actually, a lot stronger than I thought they were. So I used a pickle fork, but the knuckle spreader will go right where that arrow was pointing. My pickle fork, not the ideal tool to use here, but it does work. You will hammer that and wedge it into place so you can spread it just enough to get the strut assembly out. And of course the tie rod has to be removed, so you can move the knuckle just enough so you can lean it over and remove it, or remove just the strut assembly. No matter which method you choose, it's going to have to come off anyways. And the axle nut as well, same exact thing, 32mm for the axle nut. Now once that nut is off, there is an indentation on your CV axles to where you can use the proper type of punch to hammer that CV axle out of place. If you just start getting a hammer and whacking at it, you can damage the threads, and you will either have to replace your CV axle or grind off the top threads. I've been there before, so just letting you know. Tie rod comes off. I usually use a hammer to whack it, break it loose. If this doesn't work, you will need a puller as well for that. And I am lifting the knuckle off of the ball joint. You can see, be careful with that boot because it's easy to tear. You can just lift it up and lift it off. If there's rust, it's going to be a lot harder. Just took a hammer and kind of gave it a few hits and got it loose and got it off. Now I got it all off and ready to take out. You can see the caliper suspended here. I mentioned that a little earlier. You'll want to do that. But now it's going to come right out and I can start messing with it. Now, if you had the quick struts, you'd be putting the new one in, but you don't have the quick struts. You're watching this video. I'm going to remove it from the knuckle. This is a primitive method. Once again, the knuckle spreaders will be your friend. Remember, because we're taking this apart, the strut mount has to align with the strut. And I'm going to show you right now what you're going to be looking for. This notch on both the strut mount and the top plastic piece are going to be lined up with this on the strut. Your new strut will have that, and it will also have that on the new strut mount as well. So the new strut mount, all this new hardware up top will be different, but they will still have the alignment marks. You will see that in just a second. Now here are my spring compressors. Here's the scary part that I keep seeing all over social media. Yes, there is some danger to it, but a lot of people use these just fine. You do need to exercise a lot of caution with them. And again, I'm not actually encouraging you to use these. This video is for the people that are going to do it anyways. I recommend not putting your hand on the spring in between them and not pointing it at your face. These things can go flying and really cause some injury. So keep that in mind. If I didn't spend enough time talking about the liability that you can injure yourself using these things, can't say it enough. But then again, remember, this video is for the people who are doing it anyways. Once you have the spring compressed, you should be able to move that top strut mount. As you see here, I have the nut loosened a little bit as well, so a little bit of cheating here, but I had it loosened a little bit, not removed. You should be able to remove that top strut mount. That means that the tension has been relieved and you can now take it off. I also like to check to make sure that the spring compressors are not looking like they're going to slide together or pop off or anything like that. You really want to double check all of that stuff before you take that top strut mount off. As you can see here, I have some holding that center strut, so I can remove that nut, and it comes almost off right here, and I'll have it off right now. And here's why you replace your strut mounts. Yeah, I wouldn't even attempt to do this and reuse the front strut mount, so that makes enough sense. Now I'm going to carry over the strut bellows. If it's torn, I would replace it. These ones were in very good condition. And I'm going to carry over the bump stops. It's going to go right onto the new strut mount, just like you see here. Now I have my spring here. Do not drop this. I'm going to repeat myself. Do not drop this. Do not grab it from the center or where between. Basically, you don't want to get your fingers caught in the strut and the spring compressors. So I'm going to take all the hardware and put them all back on the new strut. You see that position is going to snug up against that corner because the spring, that is going to be where the spring begins to coil. Here's the bellow. Make sure there's no dirt in it because it's supposed to protect your strut from dirt. And I'm removing that spring from the old strut, putting the bellow on the new strut mount and putting it onto the new strut. The spring is on the strut. Now, you have to pay attention to the direction that this goes. You'll be able to see it eventually, and I'll show you on camera. You'll see where it fits into place. It will fit onto the spring properly to where it fits flat on the top. Just watch the video. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Also, before you drive that top nut in with an impact, make sure you're using the one that came with the strut. Because if you try to use the other one, the thread pitches are not always the same, so you can damage your strut actually. So that would be a nightmare. So in this clip, I'm removing the spring compressors, which was a mistake. I ended up removing them too soon. I had to put them back on because my strut mount was not aligned to my liking with the strut. You'll see here, the strut mount is just a hair to the right. It might be fine, but I didn't want it to be off to the right. I wanted it to be lined up perfectly with the strut. You'll see here, there is the notch, and here's the strut mount. You can see the very top piece is a little bit off to the right hand side. It might be fine, but I don't really want it to be off to the right hand side. I wanted it to be straight. So you can see I'm able to actually move it. So I can adjust it just right before I remove the spring compressors and put some tension on that. And here is how that mount on the top goes. It's a little confusing when you're looking at it, but it should fit that spring nicely. Now the side that you're watching me do is the passenger side. This is the knuckle. I ended up spraying little WD-40 and hammering my pickle fork in there. If you have a knuckle spreader, again, it's going to be a whole lot easier. This job is straightforward. It's not easy, but it's straightforward, and with the right tools, you can get it done no problem. Without the right tools, you could fight it for hours. This time it did work out for me. I got it in. You see it dropped right into place, and I put the whole assembly back in. When it came to the driver's side, however, and I have footage of that, I did not do it that way. I left the knuckle on the car and I removed the strut assembly from the knuckle, and it was really just a whole lot easier, which is why I'm making this video. I know somebody's gonna probably struggle with this just like I did. I'm used to working on a lot of foreign cars. Some of them have this, some of them don't. So this one was no big deal once I figured it out. Once you figure it out, you'll be able to breeze right through this. Again, the knuckle spreaders can make your life a whole lot easier rather than just using the pickle fork, because I was able to hammer the pickle fork in there and then just drop the assembly into place. And once the assembly was dropped into place, I could put it back together and start putting all the bolts back on. And here is where I'm going to be putting the pickle fork, and I'm going to hammer that right into place. Again, the knuckle spreader is a whole lot easier than using the pickle fork, but I didn't have the knuckle spreader with me. As you can see, that's where it's in. It's going to be wedged in there. You're really going to have to hammer it in. And then from there, I'm able to drop that assembly down. Almost down. Sometimes it just drops right into place, but it's not doing that right now. Like literally 2 seconds later, a couple whacks. Get the hammer, and she's in. There we go. Okay. Now that the strut is in place, you can actually use a jack on the knuckle if you want to put some pressure on that as well to kind of help you with that. So something to keep in mind. Now onto the rear shocks. They are back here and go through the trunk. There's only one 13mm bolt on top, and now is the time to loosen it up. Those 2 bolts off to the side don't get removed because they are welded to the body. You remove those from the bottom. The driver's side is the exact same thing. So I'm only going to be showing you the passenger side. The other 2, that's it. I'm loosening up that 13mm bolt. Now I'm going to go underneath on the passenger side and remove the 2 10mm bolts. That is the location of them. They're not tight. Very easy. They come off like butter. Now once you have those loose, the lower bolt is a 15mm bolt. If you have some rust, this one can be a challenge, but just keep that in mind. Once that bolt is off, the shock comes off. Now I didn't replace the rear mounts, the shock mounts, because they're in really good condition. The rears don't really wear so as quickly as the fronts, because they don't deal with all of the turning of the wheels and everything like that. So this one is in good condition, didn't need to replace it, so I'm going to reuse it with the new shock. I'm going to clean this out as well. The bump stop and the protector. Bump stops. Make sure there's no dirt going into my new shock. And I'm going to reuse that mount with the new shock and put that new shock right back in. Go ahead and put it on in. And that is really it for the video. There isn't much more left to this. I'll put the torque specs in the description because I know a lot of people are going to ask about that. And this gives you another option on how to do this without the preloaded assemblies, especially the front ones. Now, I get it, spring compressors aren't necessarily the most comfortable tool to use at all, and there is a danger element to them. So hey, I'm not giving you advice and telling you to use it, but just this is for those people that are going to do it anyways and want to save the money or use a different specific type of shock. Well, this is for them. And that is it. You are done. The only thing left to do is take it for a test drive. If this video helped you out, make sure to like and subscribe because there will be more videos on this car on this channel in the very near future. And don't forget, if you're looking for high quality, genuine auto parts, make sure to check out aeroparts.com.